Welcome home, y'all. It is another Native Land Pod MiniPod. I'm Angela Rye. There's Tiffany Cross and Andrew Gillum. And today we are going to ask an age-old question. Can Black people be racist? I'm going to start with Andrew.
No, you don't.
He never wants to answer this question.
Come on, Why? Andrew.
He never wants to answer.
I'm seriously thinking about it, only because, you know how, I feel like Black social scientists have like this construct of Black people cannot be racist against themselves because we are not in a position of power. And racism is part of a structure that is intended to produce a certain outcome, largely one that does not include us as a part of the beneficiary of whatever the outcomes are, should they be positive. So social scientists tell us one way, but I guess if I were thinking about it in layman's terms, and I was just thinking, are there attitudes that Black folks can have that are negative toward one another based off of some things, the way they dress, where they're from, what side of the tracks they grew up on, what schools they went to or didn't go to? If that were the framing, I would say, yes, we can demonstrate classist and bigoted opinions. But I feel like I'm wrong for even saying we could be racist because I've read so many social scientists who say it's impossible. What you think? Can we be racist in the traditional construct or in the one I just made up, which was basically some attitudes about?
It's a complicated answer, right? I don't think it's yes or no. In the traditional construct, no, because there is no construct in which Black people went over to Europe, kidnapped a bunch of people, raped them, beat the humanity out of them, and created this global infrastructure to produce their wealth and create a power structure where we would have that kind of reach. So in the traditional sense, no. I do, however, think, yes, there are instances in which Black people can be racist, in which they exercise, or we exercise our power or authority over other groups. I've seen people say things, can have racist attitudes, prejudiced attitudes about other groups of people. The Latino community, AAPI community, indigenous community. So even the Arab community. So yes, I don't know if it's racism, but I've certainly seen and heard Black people engage in hateful language. Not all, of course, but pockets of Black people have said and done certain things. I don't know. Is that racism or is that prejudice?
I don't think it's racism.
Okay.
I think there's a difference between bigotry and discrimination.
Yes.
And I think that is the point. So I want to read some definitions if that's okay.
Okay.
So Merriam-Webster says the meaning of racism is a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. I fundamentally disagree with that definition, but that is what it says. Yeah. A belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. That feels more supremacy than racism, but okay. This one I want to go to because I think that it is helpful for us to sometimes step out of an American construct. Mm-hmm. This is from the Australian Human Rights Commission. Racism is the process by which systems and policies, actions, and attitudes create inequitable opportunities and outcomes for people based on race. To me, that is racism. It is structural. It is systemic. And that means Black people cannot be racist. I think that Black people can discriminate. I think that Black people can be bigots. I think that Black people can even facilitate and engage in a hate crime. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that Black people can be racist. I'm rolling with Australia, and maybe that's where I get my second citizenship if this keeps going the way that I think it's going.
But they had a whole problem with
Aboriginal. Go ahead, Aboriginal.
No, I agree, but that's why we had to deconstruct it. I think all three of us agree that in the traditional construct of racism, which is to do with structures, powers, systems, in individual attitudes that influence all of it, then no, because we're not at the end where we can manipulate and shift those things.
Okay, so, given the fact I think that we're basically agreeing by the definition from the Australians who got their nerve too. I understand, Tiff. I saw you telling me not to go to Australia. But
there's some Americans with that definition.
But at least they have come to terms with the term, right?
Yeah.
Which is better than what we can say over here. I think we regularly get in our social media feed, you racist, you race baiter. When we hear those kinds of terms, like, what does it mean to be a race baiter? How would you all respond to, either any one of us being called a race baiter? What does it mean? And then what do you hear when that's dropped into your social media comments?
I get that so often. I gotta be honest, I pay no attention. I have zero interest in white folks telling me anything about my attitude on race relations, anything. Like, it's just not a conversation.
What does it mean, Tiff? I don't even know what it means. I'm being serious. This is a genuine. What does it mean to be a race?
I think what it means is they are hearing you say something, us say something, largely about a inequality that exists in the system that makes them uncomfortable. And they're basically saying, I've had my trials and tribulations too, and I don't blame it on race. I blame it on, a whole other thing before I get to race. But you all just seem to, when you run up against your struggle, your hardship, your lack of a promotion, that it happened because you're Black.
Yeah. And then here's my question now. So how does that square with, like, you guys have seen the Department of Justice, Office of Civil Rights has said that their new approach is going to be focused on defending white Christian men. Yeah. So if race is not a factor, why would they need to defend and protect white Christian men? That to me feels like, if there was a race baiting, that to me feels like the race bait. Because that feels like a
toddler crib, actually, to me.
Yeah. Why?
I mean, they want to put pads on their children from the earliest possible point in a force field around them, so that anything that could cause them to think more critically about the role that their ancestors may have played and the world that we get to live in today, if it offends them, if it disrupts their sensibilities or makes them to reflect poorly on themselves or the choices of their ancestors, then that is not something that we want taught to them. That is not something we want taught to anybody, because why should they have to carry a burden for something that they didn't do?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm not a whisperer for white folks. I just think a lot of times when I hear...
Sometimes it depends on the episode.
I'm not a whisperer, but I will tell you, having run for governor in a state where Black folks are 11% of the population, and you've got to talk to a lot of different people, what they really mean, the direct speak can come out, and often does, in these comfortable settings where it's just like, but why does everything have to be about race? That's a good question. I have the same goddamn question.
That is a good question.
Right.
Like, don't we feel, based on even what Tiff articulated at the top of this around, like, we didn't go to Europe and say, okay, well, we're gonna come and enslave you and take you over here, because we feel like, based on whatever bootleg ass research we've done, that you would be better conditioned and more suitable to be enslaved. We didn't do that, but they did. And so from its very foundation, which we, of course, argue we should also talk about that, 1619 versus 1776. Since 1619, right, that has been the posture. That was absolutely about race. Killing the quote-unquote savages, which are indigenous people from Indian country. That is absolutely based on race. So how could they argue anything different? Or is it just like, now we're going to gaslight you and erase this history?
It's even beyond gaslighting. They have penetrated within our community. I remember watching Steven Jackson, a former NBA player at the time, that Maria Taylor, the whole ESPN debacle with Maria Taylor over, I think her name is Rachel Lindsay, and Steven Jackson.
No,
not Rachel Lindsay.
Black.
Thank you.
Hold on. Nichols? Is it Rachel Nichols?
Rachel.
Hold on.
Whoever Rachel was at ESPN.
Rachel Nichols.
My
sports expert just got stuck.
I love y'all.
Thank you.
Sports experts. Keep going. I'm learning.
I got so much sports knowledge in here. I can't keep it all straight sometimes.
It was crowding up.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, but Jesse Jackson ran for president, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Steven Jackson came out and was caping for this white woman. And he was like, y'all know we don't like it when it happens to us. And, Rachel basically should have got this job. And I watched with such disgust because he was like these two women were the same. He was equating it like something happened to her. And number one, why do you feel like your black face and your black voice needs to be the one to come out here and defend this woman against a black woman? The power structure was all wrong. So you up here caping to protect white women because black women were privileged in this situation? Like, not at all. I thought Steven Jackson looked like a clown. And so when I hear things like that, that does make me want to scream like, black people can't be racist. But when I say when I started the conversation was like, well, maybe black people can be racist. I'll tell y'all what I was thinking about. That episode of Insecure. I don't know if y'all watched Insecure. When Issa Rae. So Angela, you remember when Issa was volunteering doing her program, after school program with the white girl, and the principal was funneling only black students to get all the extra help. And she was basically like, okay, well, it's a win. But her white colleague was like, yeah, but he's intentionally leaving out the Latino students. And she's like, yeah, I get that. But we need these numbers. We need a win. And she was saying that's racist. And she was like, black people can't be racist. And the white girl said, but you're using a position of power to deny these Latino students access to this. And I ain't gonna lie. To me, structural. That was... Right. It wasn't. The principal was in a position of power in this particular situation, as was Issa, because she controlled the budget for the program. And she wasn't promoting it, but she was kind of okay with it. The end of the episode, I mean, I can give y'all spoilers because it's been off air for a while. But the end of the episode, she realized, like, you know what? No, I need to be more inclusive, and I do need to include Latino students. Right. We got a whole different conversation going on right now. Because right now, people are like, don't talk to me about nobody else but black people because of what happened this past election. And I have to say, I struggle with that because I have always had the Fred Hampton approach. Bring along everybody. Yeah. And we are barely 14% of the population. We can't make it without allies. My harm reduction is how can we protect our people, black people, but also at what point are we ready? Because we can take a minute. It's fine. We pissed off since the election. But at what point do we say, okay, now we need to identify allies and lock arms and work together? And I think we're in the throes of figuring that out right now.
So your caping comment, Tiffany, and it could be applied to so many other examples, but could it be argued that his position was arguing more about from a perspective of power than one?
You talking about Steve Jackson?
From the start, Steve Jackson. So I'll give you. So I have heard, and this is my belief. I think racism runs the day up until it runs up against power, and oftentimes they are inextricably connected anyway. At least here in these Americas, but I feel like people see power. People who they see in power, they analyze what they think the typograph of that person is. And when they are on their climb, they emulate that same practice and behavior. Mm-hmm. You ever been with a black law enforcement officer with a badge who is roughed up?
Boys in the hood.
Right.
Boys in the hood. You can go to Maryland. Marilyn Mosby. Mm-hmm. And the prosecution, around Freddie Gray, absolutely.
Yes.
So all I'm saying is that these are people. You can't say they don't like black people. They may not like black people, but essentially, what is being carried out is I am now in a position of power. Yeah.
Wait, Maryland didn't prosecute Freddie Gray.
No.
You
thought the prosecutor prosecuted her?
I'm talking about the officers who were prosecuted by.
Yes. The
Mosby,
police and how black people were
the majority of them,
abused.
I think, were black.
Yes, correct.
Of those law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is I think that our attitudes, behaviors are much more symptomatic of an illustration of power and what happens when people ascend to levels of power than it has to do with the race construct necessarily, when the offender is largely us. I think there are models of power that the closer you get to it, and God knows if you get it, you start to replicate what you believe were the conditions that had the last guy in power. And it's through a Eurocentric model, which all of us have been taught through. And Tiffany, your point around, you can hate yourself. Like a black person can hate on other black. There's no doubt about that. In fact, Carter G. Woodson talks about it in The Miseducation of the Negro. He says if you send him to the back door, you don't have to send him. He will go because his education makes it necessary.
Right.
And that's the lasting effect of racism, is that it's been so successful that you get the people themselves to believe what you have to say about them.
Yeah. That is absolutely the truth. I would encourage people to read The Pedagogy of the Oppressed to hear more about this power structure and what happens when we get into it or when we reclaim it ourselves. Of course, the biggest fear of white folks in power is that one day when we do have the power, that we would do to them what they've done to us. So on that note, the resounding answer is no, we cannot be racist. Yes, we can be hateful, and let us work very hard to overcome hate because we know that we can't drive successful policy in hate. We can only do that with love. So on that, we welcome you all home into our family. Comment on this. Let us know if you agree with us, where we got it wrong. Most of it was Andrew today, but we love y'all. God bless you and your family.
Y'all won't get to hear it. I'm sorry. It's in the deep cut.
That's not true. That's not true. We don't do that. We don't do that.
We do now.
Welcome home, y'all.
I've been trained in the Eurocentric model. You kill it.
Andrew.
If it's bad.
Cut his fucking mic today. What is happening? I was like, I am trying to save you. Be quiet.
I've heard. At first, I heard
Andrew's
it say,
like, yeah, me
we
and
could
my
bury
friends
that
is
story.
real
I was like,
racist.
what do
He
you
love
mean
make
bury that
racist
story?
jokes.
I was like, Andrew, what are you doing? I was like, that's not what you're meaning to say.
Of course
it
not.
is.
I know,
Colored
Andrew,
people
but-
time? Jewish people time? I was like, what is going on today?
Jewish people time just like black people time.
There are commonly accepted beliefs amongst different
Lauren,
groups.
can
I
you
knew
please
what
tell
you were
Andrew he
saying.
sounded like Rush Limbaugh on this shit and for the first 5 minutes?
This happened on another podcast where this guy was saying, oh, I used to say the hard R all the time. And the guy was looking at him like uncomfortable. And he was like, yeah, like in the early 2000s among my friends, like the hard R. It's 2 white guys, hard R all the time. Well, how about they talk for about 10 minutes? And the guy was like, so you used to say the N word with the hard R. And he was like, no, I'm talking about the word retard.
Oh my God.
So he ain't got canceled.
Right.
He ain't got canceled, ruined his life for the wrong word.
He had no idea what the hard R meant. And the guy was like, no, I don't think that's what you mean.
I love it. Yeah, no, I don't talk about other groups of people. And
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.